Been following my channel for a while, you know that me and my friends really enjoy the great outdoors. If it's the forests of Michigan, the Appalachian Trail, or even the Smoky Mountains, we always try to make time for a good adventure. We usually tend to stick to the more woodsy areas, but in 2020, during the middle of the lockdowns, my friend Abdullah and I decided to go on a trip to Arizona. We had been so cooped up that we figured that spending a weekend away in the wilderness, away from all of the craziness, was the best thing for our mental health at the time. We had already lived together, so getting in the car and driving to Arizona and walking around in the wilderness wasn't a risk to anybody. If anything, it was the most responsible thing we could do. And me and my buddies do this thing that whenever we go on trips, we try to find something mysterious and interesting about the location. If it's a spooky backstory or a myth of the region, we act like we're pursuing whatever the myth is, like as a bit. It just makes it more fun because if you're just hiking, the hike could be mad boring. But if you spend the entire hike pretending to be finding clues of like the Holy Grail, the downtime on the hike is far more entertaining. Guys, I know it's silly. It's just a bit that me and my friends do. But with that being said, when we looked up myths and superstitions in Arizona, it just so happens they have an entire mountain range named after it. So naturally, we decide to hike the Superstition Mountains. And if you don't know about the Superstition Mountains, it is said that in the late 1800s, there was a prospector named Jacob Waltz that supposedly found a gold mine. And this gold mine had enough gold to make a man unimaginably rich. He claimed to know the location of it, but passed away before revealing it to anybody, or claiming any gold for himself. And that mine is now known as the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. One funny thing is that they call it the Lost Dutchman because the people in America didn't know the difference between Dutch people and Germans, but he was actually German. Anyway, it's the Lost Dutchman's mine. And before his death, he hinted that it was located in the Superstition Mountains, right near the Weaver's Needle. Weaver's Needle is a 1,000-foot high column of rock that forms a distinctive peak visible for many miles. So naturally, being the dorks that we are, we chose to do the Weaver's Needle Trail that's about 13 miles long. You could get it done in 2 days, but we plan to linger out there for 3. Listen guys, it's not the most difficult hike in the world, but you need to bring copious amounts of water with you, especially when you go in the summer like we did. We were so excited because it was the first time out of our houses in months, and we had a great bit to do the entire time. This weekend, we're treasure hunters, baby. We even looked up silly hand-drawn maps and silly riddles that were available online, so we could pretend to do a solve once we got to Weaver's Needle. We had actually gotten that idea from my buddy Sam, who actually went hunting for forest fence treasure while he was in college at Colorado State, but that's a story for a completely different time. So we packed up Abdullah's Nissan Altima with enough water and food to keep a horse alive, and one big tent that we planned on sharing. I was going to carry the water and he was going to carry the food, and we were going to split the tent between our packs. And of course, all the basic survival gear like flashlights, binoculars, and basic tools. This trip just had an extra bit of excitement around it. The world was going crazy at the time, so we felt like we were finally normal again. When we finally arrived, I was actually shocked with how empty it was. We expected that a ton of other people would have the exact same idea as us, but I guess nobody else was ready to leave their house yet. So we had this mountain all to ourselves. There was only one car in the parking lot other than ours when we arrived. And as we were unpacking our stuff, a park guide came up to the car and introduced himself. He was super friendly and he actually seemed really excited that there were people here. It must be really boring to be out here with no people showing up every day. And for us, it was nice just talking to a stranger because we lived in the city at the time, where everybody was avoiding each other by 6 feet and being super antisocial. So we were just chopping it up with this guy, and we legitimately started hitting it off with this dude. He was only a few years older than us, and he actually grew up in Phoenix. And he was into all the same stuff that we were into, all the sports, everything. And we found ourselves talking to this guy for almost 30 minutes after we had finished unloading the car. He was being super helpful, giving us tips on what we should look out for and what views we have to go see, the ones that we cannot miss. He was just an overall good dude. And he started jokingly complaining that he was jealous that we got to go out that day and that he was going to have to be stuck in the guide's cabin in the parking lot. And we started asking him, why doesn't he just go out? Because there's nobody here. And he explained that he's technically on the clock and he can't go out unless he's hired as a guide, in case anybody shows up and is looking to hire a guide. So me and Abdullah just asked him what his rate is and tell him that we would be happy if he would tag along with us. We hadn't seen any other humans in so long that we were just craving social interaction. And I mean it, we genuinely wanted him to come with. Me and Abdullah are both very curious people. And in the 30 minutes we had talked to him, he had already taught us so many cool things about this mountain range. So we both agreed he would enhance this trip significantly. Plus, he's cool and he don't even feel like a guide. He feels like he could be one of the boys. He immediately resists because he's a good guy and doesn't want to intrude on our trip. So we start pressuring him and trying to force money into his hand as a joke. And we pressured him enough that he could tell that we really meant it. And we really wanted him to come with us. This wasn't just a pity invite. So he finally obliged, but he insisted that this tour was on the house. We just had to scan our IDs and sign off that he was coming with us. So all of his bases were covered and he could enjoy the wilderness with us that day. We like to be spontaneous, and the addition of a knowledgeable guide just enhanced this trip significantly. So the guide just quickly throws together a pack for himself and lets us know that he really appreciates this. And he says that he's only going to come out with us for today. Then he wants us to enjoy the rest of the weekend alone. That seemed fair to us, so we got to hiking. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight on a couple of the clues that the Lost Dutchman left about his mine, so you understand the jokes that we were making on this hike. This is a super rudimentary breakdown of the clues that we were able to find. There's much more extensive clues on the location of the mine if you want to look them up for yourself. But remember, we were doing this as a bit, so we just held on to the simplest ones. The first clue is that the mine is located off of a trail that heads north into the Superstition Mountains. The second one is that you'll pass a stone cabin on the way to the mine. The third one is that at a certain point there's going to be a trick in the trail, meaning at one point in the trail it splits into two directions, and the direction that looks less likely to be the right way is probably the right way. Fourth, you'll pass a stone wall that has carvings on it that was apparently carved in by Apache tribes. And in the carvings, it depicts a man. Fifth, you're able to see two large columns of rock from the entrance of the mine. The sixth one is that there's an arch of stone that's almost shaped like an eye. And if you stand in the middle of the arch, you should be able to see the mine. And if you turn the opposite direction, you should be able to see Weaver's Needle from inside the arch. It wasn't even 10 minutes into our hike when me and Abdullah started joking about keeping an eye out for that stone cabin.